Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the boardroom. Look at them. The three-piece suits, the Swiss watches that cost more than your car, the MBAs from Harvard and Wharton hanging on the wall like hunting trophies. We look at these corporate titans and we see geniuses. We see visionaries playing 4D chess while the rest of us are struggling to play checkers. We assume that when a company worth billions of dollars makes a decision, it has been calculated, analyzed, and stress-tested by the brightest minds on the planet. But here is the dark, uncomfortable truth. Most of the time, they have absolutely no idea what they are doing. History is not written by the winners. It is written by the survivors, who managed to crawl out of the wreckage left behind by the idiots in charge. We are talking about decisions so catastrophically stupid, so blinded by ego and arrogance, that they didn't just lose money, they evaporated entire empires. They took brands that defined our childhoods and turned them into cautionary tales taught in business schools. Today on Arca Insight, we are not just looking at bad luck. We are looking at self-destruction. We are going to dissect the corpses of the biggest companies in history to find the exact moment they decided to pull the trigger on themselves. You don't lose $100 billion by accident. You have to work really, really hard to be this incompetent. To understand how these disasters happen, we first need to understand the psychology of the people in charge. Meet the institutional CEO. This is a creature who has spent 30 years climbing the corporate ladder. He has survived office politics, backstabbing, and endless meetings. By the time he reaches the top, he has convinced himself of one fatal lie. He believes that the status quo is eternal. He looks at his company like a fortress. He sees the thick walls of cash flow, the moat of brand recognition, and the army of lawyers. He thinks he is safe. But in the world of business, safety is just a slow death. The biggest threat to a successful company is never the competition. It is their own success. Success breeds arrogance. It creates a culture where protecting the old model becomes more important than inventing the new one. They become addicted to the smell of their own exhaust fumes. They are driving a Ferrari at 200 miles per hour, but they are staring exclusively at the rearview mirror because that is where the money used to come from. Imagine a conversation in the boardroom of a giant corporation just before the collapse. A young, nervous engineer walks in. The engineer says, "Sir, I have found a flaw in our business model. The market is shifting. If we do not pivot now, we will be obsolete in 5 years." The CEO laughs, takes a sip of his expensive sparkling water, and says, "Pivot? Why would we pivot? We made $4 billion last quarter. The stock is at an all-time high. Why would I risk my bonus on an unproven gamble? Get out of my office and get back to work." That is the moment of death. It does not happen when the bank accounts hit zero. It happens the moment comfort becomes more valuable than survival. And today, we are going to visit the graves of 3 giants who chose comfort, 3 titans who had the chance to own the future, but decided to take a nap instead. Let's rewind the clock to 1998. The internet was a different place. It was slow, it was noisy, and the king of this digital jungle was Yahoo. At that time, Yahoo was the gatekeeper. If you wanted to go online, you went through them. They were the digital landlords of the World Wide Web. Enter 2 graduate students from Stanford, Larry Page and Sergey Brin. They had built a little search engine called Backrub, which they wisely renamed Google. They walked into Yahoo's headquarters with a simple offer. They said, "We have this technology that helps people find things on the internet. We want to sell it to you." The price tag? $1 million. $1 million. That is not a typo. That is the price of a decent house in San Francisco today. For Yahoo, $1 million was a rounding error. It was the money they found in the couch cushions of the executive lounge. But Yahoo said no. They laughed them out of the room. Now, you might think, oh, they just missed the potential. No, it is much worse than that. They understood exactly what Google did, and they hated it. Here is the twisted logic that killed them. Yahoo's business model was a walled garden. They wanted you to come to Yahoo and stay there forever. Read the news, check the weather, look at stocks, and never, ever leave. They sold ads based on how long they could keep your eyeballs trapped on their screen. Google was the opposite. Google's entire purpose was to send you away. You search for a recipe, click a link, and boom, you are gone. You leave Google to go to the cooking site. To the Yahoo executives, this looked like insanity. Why would we pay $1 million for a tool that helps our customers leave our store? It was like a prison warden refusing to buy a key because he does not want the prisoners to escape. Fast forward 4 years to 2002. Google is growing. The Yahoo executives realize, maybe we made a mistake. They call Larry and Sergey back. The price has gone up. Now, Google wants $3 billion. Terry Semel, the CEO of Yahoo at the time, sits down to negotiate. $3 billion is a lot, but Yahoo has the cash. This is their chance to own the future of the internet. They negotiate. They haggle. Terry tries to push the price down. He offers $3 billion, but then the stock market wobbles, and he tries to lower the deal. He hesitates. He thinks he has the upper hand. Larry and Sergey get annoyed. They walk away. The deal dies. Yahoo saved $3 billion that day. Good job, Terry. Do you know what Google is worth today? Roughly $2 trillion. Yahoo spent the next decade slowly bleeding out. They lost their identity. They lost their users. Eventually, they sold their core business to Verizon for about $4.8 billion. Think about the math. They could have owned the entire internet for the price of a few office buildings. Instead, they chose to protect their little walled garden until the walls crumbled down and crushed them. They were so obsessed with keeping people inside that they didn't notice the entire world had moved outside. If Yahoo was a tragedy of fear, Blockbuster is a tragedy of addiction. Let's go back to the year 2000. If you are old enough, you remember the ritual. Friday night, you get in the car. You drive to the store with the blue and yellow ticket stub sign. You walk the aisles, smelling that weird mix of carpet cleaner and popcorn. You fight with your siblings over which movie to rent. It was the golden age of physical media, and Blockbuster was the emperor. They had 9,000 stores. They were invincible. Then, two guys walk in, Reed Hastings and Mark Randolph, the founders of a tiny, annoying little company called Netflix. At this point, Netflix was not a streaming giant. They were a mail-order DVD service. They were losing money. They were desperate. They pitched a deal to John Antioco, the CEO of Blockbuster. They said, "Buy us. We will run your online business. You take the stores, we take the internet. The price? $50 million. John Antioco struggled not to laugh in their faces. $50 million? For a company that mails plastic discs in red envelopes? He said no. He practically threw them out of the office. Now, the history books say Blockbuster failed because they didn't see the internet coming. That is a lie. They knew the internet was coming. They knew streaming was the future. The reason they didn't buy Netflix, and the reason they didn't change, is much darker. Blockbuster had a dirty little secret. They were running a business model that hated its own customers. A huge chunk of their profit did not come from renting movies. It came from penalizing you for keeping them too long. Late fees. In the year 2000, Blockbuster made nearly $800 million just from late fees. That was 16% of their revenue. Think about that. Their most loyal customers, the ones who rented the most movies, were the ones being punished the hardest. It was an abusive relationship. When Netflix came along, their pitch was simple. No due dates, no late fees. It was a model based on subscription, not punishment. For Blockbuster to compete with Netflix, they would have had to kill the late fees. They would have had to take that $800 million of free money and set it on fire. And they couldn't do it. They were addicted to the easy cash. The board of directors looked at the spreadsheets and said, "We cannot give up 16% of our revenue just to make customers happy." So they kept the fees. They kept the abuse. And the customers did exactly what abused people do. They left the moment they had an option. Blockbuster didn't die because Netflix was a technological miracle. Blockbuster died because their business model depended on their customers failing. Netflix just offered a model where the customer could win. By the time Blockbuster finally tried to launch their own streaming service and remove late fees, it was too late. The cancer had spread. The customers were gone. Today, there is exactly one Blockbuster left in the world, in Bend, Oregon. It is not a business. It is a museum, a tombstone for a company that loved its penalties more than its people. Our final stop in this graveyard of giants brings us to a different kind of disease. If Yahoo was fear and Blockbuster was addiction, then Kodak and Nokia suffered from paralysis. The medical term for this in business is cannibalization. Let me explain that like you are 5. Imagine you own a bakery that sells the best chocolate chip cookies in the world. You make millions selling these cookies. Then, one day, your head chef invents a new kind of cake. It is delicious, but if you sell the cake, people might stop buying your cookies. So, what do? A smart business owner sells the cake, because if he doesn't, the bakery across the street will invent it and steal his customers. But Kodak and Nokia, they took the cake and threw it in the trash. In 1975, a Kodak engineer named Steve Sasson invented the digital camera. He built it. It worked. He took it to his bosses. Their reaction was legendary. They said, "That is cute, but do not tell anyone about it." Why? Because Kodak made its money selling film, little rolls of plastic. Digital cameras didn't use film. They were terrified that their own invention would kill their main product. So they hid the future in a closet. They protected the film business for 20 more years. They squeezed every last penny out of the old technology. And then, the digital revolution happened anyway. But because Kodak refused to lead it, they were crushed by it. They didn't want to eat their own lunch, so Canon and Sony ate it for them. Nokia is the same story. In the early 2000s, Nokia was the king of mobile phones. They had engineers who built touchscreens. They had early versions of an app store. They had everything the iPhone would eventually have. But the executives at Nokia were hardware guys. They loved selling plastic bricks with buttons. They looked at the touchscreen prototype and said, "No one wants to type on glass. Buttons are forever." They were so afraid of hurting the sales of their current phones that they refused to launch the phones of the future. This is the ultimate irony of business. The things that make you rich today are often the things that will kill you tomorrow. To survive, you have to be willing to destroy your own best-selling product before someone else does. Kodak and Nokia chose to protect the past, and the future ran them over like a freight train. So, what is the lesson here? Why did we spend the last 10 minutes dancing on these billion-dollar graves? It is simple. The market does not care about your legacy. It does not care how big your office is or how many awards are on your shelf. The market is a meat grinder, and it is always hungry for fresh meat. Yahoo thought they could control the flow of information. Blockbuster thought they could punish their customers forever. Kodak thought they could stop technology from advancing. They were all wrong. They all chose the comfort of today over the pain of change. And now, they are just footnotes in a Wikipedia article. The next time you see a company that looks too big to fail, remember these stories. Remember that the Titanic was unsinkable until it hit the ice. If you want to understand how the world really works, and you want a front row seat to the next financial disaster, make sure you hit that subscribe button for Arca Insight. We do not sell dreams here. We analyze nightmares. I will see you in the next collapse. Cheers.